A bunch of workers in Karnataka almost did what all of China's might wasn't able to. After getting their salaries for the month of November 2020, over 7,000 factory workers went on a rampage at Taiwan iPhone maker's Wistron cola plant, destroying production lines and leaving parts of the phone scattered all over the 43-acre complex. At Narsapura, around 60 kilometers from Bengaluru, Karnataka, 45 kilometers on the east of the metropolis at Bidadi, Toyota's factory has been under a lockout since around the same time, after the car maker refused to reinstate a suspended unionized employee on disciplinary grounds, making the company put out a statement. It is one of the most problematic sites globally. India's drive to attract global manufacturing at a time when the world is looking to realign their supply chains was mocked at by the Chinese mouthpiece. This is a potential risk when manufacturers consider moving their production lines out of China. Rival iPhone maker Foxconn employs hundreds of thousands of people in Shenzhen and Zhengzhou during peak season, but is not as keen to deploy the mega factory model here. The company would like to cap India plants at 10,000 workers. Any bigger and we'd be at the mercy of unions and local politics. Navigating India's labour laws can be a painful exercise. As the number of employees increase from 6 to 7, the Trade Union Act becomes applicable. When they go from 7 to 10, the Factories Act kicks in. And when the number increases to 100, the Industrial Dispute Act, a law propounded in the year of independence, becomes applicable. At this stage, a company cannot fire an employee without prior approval from the government and has to continue paying salaries even if it was bankrupt. Make in India under such regulation was akin to Hotel California, a famous song by the American rock band, where you could check out anytime you wanted, but you could never leave. So to circumvent this issue, instead of increasing their permanent staff, businesses began hiring contract workers through staffing agencies, to whom union agreements on wages, annual increments, benefits and working hours for permanent workers was not applicable, resulting in contract workers working longer shifts for lesser pay and not receiving any type of benefit, no provident fund, medical, travel leave, gratuity, etc. At Wistron too, contract workers were being paid much lower wages than their permanent counterparts for doing the same amount of work, where under 1,500 permanent workers worked alongside almost 8,500 contract workers that were hired through 6 staffing firms specializing in these types of services. This proportion of 30 to 70 between permanent and contractual workers is quite common. A majority of the 12,500 industrial disputes handled by CIRM in 2018-19 were related to contractual labor complaints of less pay for same work. Aware of this permanent source of conflict, the new labor laws make companies treat all workers equally. Workers can be hired for a particular period of time, but will be eligible for all benefits till the contract period ends. This change in labor laws is part of the government's effort to modernize and consolidate 44 central laws under 4 codes. The new Industrial Relations Code allows hire and fire of workers without government approval for up to 300 workers, but balances it out by making companies create a fund to reskill them. To avoid disruption, it wants workers to give management a 14-day notice period before striking. And to curtail the inspectorate system, it introduces a random web-based inspection system. Makes the employer liable to pay at least 1 lakh if an employee dies in a workplace accident. Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions consolidates 13 laws, where contract workers hired through staffing firms will be treated as direct employees. Women will be allowed to work night shifts, migrant workers will get money to travel home once a year, and access to ration shops anywhere. And employers have to conduct an annual health checkup of every worker above 45 years of age. The Social Security Code consolidates 9 laws, reducing registration forms from 4 to 1. Providing staffing firms a single license to hire workers across different locations instead of multiple location-specific licenses. Brings together all benefits, provident fund, employee state insurance, maternity benefits, gratuity and other entitlements under a single simplified law. By increasing the maximum number of hours a worker can work per day from 8 to 12, subject to an overall limit of 48 hours a week, companies can make it a 4-day work week, keeping the plant shut from Friday for the weekend to save operational costs, not to mention an extra holiday for workers. The idea behind it was to give companies the flexibility to complete urgent orders. though there are worries it could lead to an increase in workplace accidents due to fatigue. But this benefit comes at a cost, as extra hours would be billed at twice the normal rate. Rajasthan's Vasundhara-led administration was an early mover in this regard and had made similar changes to their labour code in 2014. Due to its seasonal nature, fixed-term employment was first introduced in the garment industry in 2016 and later extended to all sectors. However, results have been mixed. Unemployment rates went up. It's 10.6% now, among the highest in the country, with the national average at 7.5%. But as expected, labour productivity increased as workers were more scared of losing their jobs. It's no surprise then that states with less restrictive labour laws showed 11 to 14% more productivity. Gujarat was another early adopter, exempting special economic zones from all national labour laws, allowing hire and fire, turning the state into a major manufacturing hub. Under the cover of coronavirus-induced unemployment, the UP government of Yogi Adityanath in May 2020 suspended all but 3 labour codes for 3 years. Soon, 14 states joined them. Madhya Pradesh too went several steps further in the ease of doing business reforms, with a single form for registration and licenses valid for the life of a project with no annual renewal. Shops were allowed to remain open from 6 am to midnight, and it went from 61 registers and 13 returns for industries to just 1 return with self-certification and virtually no inspection by the Labour Department. As expected, trade unions have stridently opposed these reforms, believing they undermine the hard-won rights of workers and would lead to greater exploitation, complaining to the Geneva-based International Labour Organization ILO for violation of its Convention 144, who responded with a general letter expressing deep concern but without specifying anything in particular. Azim Premji, who has personally dealt with labour unions at his many factories, is not happy either. Shocking to hear. State governments are considering suspending or have already suspended many of the labour laws that protect workers. Tapan Sen of C2 called it a dangerous move. They are altering the employment profile, that hire and fire can be done through the back door. The chronology for labour law reform should have been worker first and productivity and mobility next. Hiring and firing works in developed nations because there is a safety, welfare and social security net. Not so in India. Labour Minister Santosh Kumar Gangawar seems to agree. The complete suspension of labour rights as done by some states cannot be termed as labour reforms and would not be accepted in the current form. Even staffing firms that supply contract workers seem to hedge. Reforms in labour laws need to make compliance simple and easy, but diluting the law as some states have done is not the right way. There are over 1,100 acts and 58,000 compliances regarding labour across sectors, and on an average, there could be 8 to 10 changes every day. Ensuring compliance is so complex that Team Leads has an 85-member team that only looks after compliance. However, everyone agrees that some changes are necessary. India's population will surpass China's in about 7 years, and for the next 10 years at least, 10 million youth will enter the workforce each year, at a time when automation may further threaten employment and will ensure that labour costs are kept down. Already the bargaining power of labour has been on the wane. The number of man days lost due to strikes fell by an astounding 85% in 5 years. Strict labour regulations affect competitiveness. Restrictive labour regulation in India is associated with a 35% increase in a firm's labour cost. However, in a survey of over 9,000 firms across India, fewer than 5% of firms identified labour regulations as an obstacle to their operations. Instead, 5 other areas of concern have kept foreign firms from investing much in India. Poor ease of doing business, red tape, unstable tax structure, high cost of power, and poor transportation and logistics infrastructure. The centre has recognized these gaps and are plugging them. Corporate taxes have been cut from 33 to 25% and for some to 19%. They're working on a new electricity code easing licensing and distribution. But states too have power to attract companies and frame more liberal policies, since labour is a concurrent item. Some like Apple are here already, but Medtronic, Johnson & Johnson and Abbott are all contemplating shifting part of their operations away from China and are among more than 1,000 firms the Indian government has wooed, taking advantage of the US, EU and Japan's desire to diversify their risks and move their supply chains out of China, providing incentives like PLI, production-linked incentive scheme for 10 key sectors, in a bid to take advantage of the situation and make India a 5 trillion economy by 2025. A lot of large OEMs will migrate to countries like India and Vietnam. There is growth opportunity in the supply chain. Asian neighbors too are vying for the pie. Indonesian President Joko Widodo has promised foreign investors, "We will make changes to our country's difficult hire and fire laws by the end of the year." While some argue these laws go too far, others say they don't go far enough. They want more, like removal of sunset clauses for retrenchment and increasing the limit to 1,000 workers or more from the current 300, having only one trade union in any company, and stopping political affiliations of unions. Wistron acknowledged mistakes on its part and removed Vice President Vincent Lee. Though plans to start operations in both Wistron and Toyota's plants are announced, they are yet to restart in any meaningful way. India is one of just 3 countries in the world that manufactures Apple products, and the Wistron incident could spook others looking to enter India. Despite this, it seems Apple is not backing down from its commitment and in fact is planning to start manufacturing iPads, AirPods and MacBooks in India. But it is not as though China is without problem. The Foxconn suicides were motivated over low pay and poor working condition. India's problem is that it simply lacks the capacity to enforce its laws and regulations. The wise course of action, therefore, is to have a minimal, transparent and sensible set of rules that do not impose an excessive regulatory burden. Prime Minister Modi is once again attempting to reform a sector that badly needs to update itself. We hope these reforms will be adequately debated in Parliament and modified if necessary before being implemented to avoid another showdown. Bisbo's limerick. Labour laws are stuck in the industrial age, where factory workers work their life for a wage. But a new order emerges as the old one submerges. Both sides have to compromise to be competitive in trade. Join Bisbo on Discord and follow us on Bisbo Go at Instagram.